Good morning, everyone. Why don't we take roll, and then we'll get started.
Bloom.
Here.
Gordon.
Here.
Obernolte. Patterson.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is our first oversight hearing, and I want to thank all of the agency directors and their representatives for being here today as we officially begin our dialogue on the 2016-17 budget. Certainly, we won't always agree on how we respond to the many needs or investments that the people expect and deserve, but I know that everyone here is committed to the end goal of improving the quality of life for all Californians, whether that means protecting our water supply, ensuring that everyone has access to clean water, protecting the public's health and safety, safeguarding our cherished natural resources for future generations to enjoy, allowing agriculture to thrive and feed our growing population, and modernizing our transportation system so that we move goods efficiently and commuters spend less time in the car and more time with their families and friends. We cannot underscore the importance of the Budget Committee's role in making this happen. This is where we solve our problems. Policy changes don't matter if we only talk the talk and don't walk the walk. But I want to also emphasize that this committee is not simply about discussing what the governor has proposed in the budget. Certainly that's important, and we'll give it due consideration. But this committee is about oversight, a priority that the Speaker called out for us, the new Speaker called out for us only a couple of days ago. And this committee, as I just mentioned, is about solving problems and addressing warning signs before it becomes too late. It's fair to say that we've failed in this responsibility far too much, whether it was the tragic gas line explosion in San Bruno in 2010 that killed 8 people and devastated an entire neighborhood, or whether it's water contamination in East Porterville and lead contamination in communities in East Los Angeles. All of these issues are things that we could have uncovered, and we like to think that in the future these types of issues can be uncovered and dealt with before they happen. That's what oversight is all about. If we can make progress on preventing bad things from happening, then we're doing our job extremely well. So as we talk about specific proposals to address problems in the budget, I also expect that we talk about problems that we may not have solutions or proposals for yet, things that we anticipate might happen. How do we look forward and get ahead of those issues those things that we don't want to see happen? We must work together and be more proactive and less reactive. And with that, I'd like to ask if anyone else would like to add comments. If not, we'll get started with our hearing, beginning with the Secretary of Natural Resources, Secretary Laird. It's good to see you here again.
It's good to be here again. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I know that I was in front of this subcommittee together with Natural Resources just a little bit ago on many forest issues, so while I'll mention them, I probably won't go into the depth because you aired those issues in quite good detail. I know that you're going to hear behind me in the whole process from the individual departments in great detail. And so what I want to do is give the global overview of the major issues that are going on in the Resources Agency and how they are tied to some of the things that are in front of you in the budget. And for the uninitiated, we have 26 departments, boards, commissions, conservancies. We have a $9.5 billion proposed budget, of which $2.9 billion is the general fund. And I think I should lead by just saying, despite the wonderful weekend of rain that we had this last weekend, coming out of 4 years of essentially the driest 4 years in modern California history, the drought is front and center still, because it will take multiple rainy seasons to pull it out. So the proposed budget really acts as if we're going to have to go into a 5th year of drought-related programs. And so there are still $323 million on a one-time basis to continue the immediate response to the drought. The snow survey that was a week ago before the storm showed that we were 83% of normal, and many of the reservoirs are still at roughly half of what their capacity is. So I expect that no matter what happens in a Miracle March, we will still be looking very closely at this, and as that develops, we will work with you on just what is most appropriate in the budget with regard to the drought going forward. The California Water Action Plan is what was the basis in many ways for the negotiations that produced the water bond that was passed by the voters just over a year ago. And that Water Action Plan is an all of the above policy. In history of California, we've always done one big thing at a time, whether it's the State Water Project or the Central Water Project or Southern California doing Owens Valley or the Colorado River. And we are trying to do everything we need to do to get to a sustainable water system. And so there are items here that are the next generation of the bond expenditures recommended. And the one that seems to have generated a lot of interest is the settlements pot in the bond. There were $475 million set aside in the bond for legal settlements. And we are recommending 4 different items out of that. One question that has come up is the Klamath Dam removal. There's $250 million, which is the state obligation for that, recommended in the budget. And there's some confusion because there were 2 Klamath agreements. There was one on restoration that Congress really had to act on by the first of the year, and they didn't. But there's also a hydroelectric agreement that is directly responsible for removing the Klamath dams. There was one of the biggest fish die-offs in modern history in roughly the 2001 period, and it led to a disaster at the time declared related to salmon and other issues for coastal fisheries. And so we are moving ahead with the hydroelectric part of it. And the Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Commerce, State of California, State of Oregon signed an agreement in principle to finish that agreement. There are surcharges on rate bills on the Oregon side of the border and on the California side of the border, and something like 84% of the customers in the Klamath Basin are on the Oregon side of the border. So that is designed to collect, if I recall, 180 or $200 million over time, and then it's matched by the bond money, and it provides the money to remove the dam. So we are still moving ahead with that. The governor set goals in response to an assembly bill with regard to the Salton Sea and habitat restoration around it. There's money in here for that. There is flood protection that is part, and in general, the Central Valley Project Improvement Act, and there's also the San Joaquin River restoration. The controversy has been because the Tahoe has not moved into the priority for that, and there are people that wish that we don't fund something to be able to fund Tahoe. We're working with the Tahoe stakeholders. There are alternate pots with regard to integrated regional watershed and some other things in which they're eligible, but we're just looking to find places to try to do that, because the real problem is there are about $800 million of settlements that could have fit in this pot, and the pot was only $475 million. So we are working on that. That will be in front of you. In CAL FIRE, that is where we had a lot of discussion about forests in the joint hearing you had. We're doing, in the next year, a forest carbon study, an economic opportunity study, trying to figure out what the actual path is moving forward. The governor's recommended $150 million for forest health. A big focus is the tree mortality and the emergency declaration, and we are working with the stakeholders to try to, by the time we move toward the budget adoption, to have a clearer picture of how that breaks down. And it probably will include different things for biomass, some things for fuels preparation, many things to just deal with the crisis that is caused by the tree mortality. In CAL FIRE, we also have a professional standards program recommended. We're trying to move whether it's background investigations or other work that's personnel. We're trying to move CAL FIRE into place that the prison system and California Highway Patrol and park rangers are in law enforcement to have an appropriate unit to do that. There is a thing here for helicopter replacements, and we expect that there will be a refined proposal in the May revise, but we have roughly 12 federal surplus Vietnam-era helicopters that make the heart of our firefighting air fleet. They are gradually becoming very aged, and we will have a plan to replace them over time, bit by bit in different years, and I think that'll be refined in the May revise. We continue marching down the road to strengthen the state park system, given some of the problems that have happened there. The Parks Forward Commission over a year ago made their report. We're busy implementing it, having a new path to leadership in the Parks Department, dealing with modernizing fee collection and technology, because you could only pay in cash until recently at every park, and we're trying to move at the appropriate parks to digital fee collection. We're working with Google Trekker. They are digitalizing many of the trails across the park system so people can look at them and see. We have 2 new budget tools and organization structure so that people can see exactly by park what the cost is, and given the bill that came out of the legislature last year that finally formalized what relationships could be for partner organizations, it's easy if you finally have budget information for each park for people to know how they can best partner. You can sit there and make that link, and so that is very good. In the budget, there's 2 other proposals that will be of issue in parks. One is there's a $60 million recommendation for deferred maintenance. There is a huge backlog of deferred maintenance in the state parks, and as part of the one-time deferred maintenance that the governor has recommended, there's $60 million here. Just as an aside, there's a substantial amount recommended for a flood control catch-up in our agency as well, and some much smaller ones for the Conservation Corps and a CAL FIRE for just certain facilities. The other parks issue is that the state parks fund that collects from fees has finally been spent down, and there needs to be an infusion of roughly $30 million to keep the parks operational level at the same level. So what's recommended this year is a one-time diversion of $31 million from the off-road vehicle fund before it goes in, and that is coupled with the fact that as part of the governor's repayment of loans and paying off of bonds, the so-called wall of debt, $112 million is proposed to be paid back to the off-road vehicle fund this year. So there's a diversion of $31 million, while $112 million is proposed to be paid back in the budget. So that is there as well. We're continuing our efforts on the Department of Conservation with regard to the Division of Oil and Gas to upgrade it, given the fact that there hadn't been significant attention paid to it for decades. We are still working to digitalize the 50,000 permits that existed only on paper and not digitally. We are undergoing a reorganization to put people where the issues are across the state and not just look at where the offices have been. We have a $1.3 million special fund and money for an oil and gas training program to help implement a comprehensive training program to make sure there's standardization across the agency and how people deal with permits. And there is what is of special interest to at least one member of this subcommittee. There is a $1.4 million special fund increase in 10 positions to deal with pipeline inspections and prevent possible pipeline releases by testing the sensitive gas pipelines on a periodic basis. That's in here. The Conservation Corps There's a $15 million recommendation out of Cap and Trade for the Energy Corps program. They do energy audits, energy efficiency. It's been very successful, so this is like continuing that. There's money for a Butte Fire Center to reopen a residential training center with fire crews that are Corps members. There's also a site evaluation recommendation for Pomona, Napa, and Ukiah. On oceans, we have had a very significant negative impact from both harmful algal blooms and the heating of the ocean for El Nino that led to a massive die-off roughly off the Mendocino coast. Abalone that died and just have washed ashore. Mussels that were just dying in place and disintegrating because of the lack of oxygen. And we will have a major report on ocean acidification and hypoxia that will be released in early April. And I think the caution is some people think that this combination of events was a one-time thing related to El Nino in conjunction with the long-term impacts of acidification. But we have to worry that this is a long-term change, and we're just seeing the beginning of it. So we're going to make that assessment, and if there are issues in oceans, we will work with you on that to deal with that. And then lastly, maybe just we have had a problem in the last few years with the Environmental License Plate Fund. It has been I don't know what the word is, overdrafted, oversubscribed. Part of the reason is in the budget meltdown of 2009, it was used to try to carry many things when money wasn't available. And there is a long-term solution proposed in this budget, which is basically to take at least one of the regulatory agencies that was moved into that, move it back on the general fund. There's a fee that is here, a small fee, but in general, it's make the fund sustainable for everything that is on it now and do that moving forward. And I know there'd been a desire in the legislature that that be done, and so there is a proposal that makes it solvent. With that, as the general overview, I would be happy to answer any questions that any committee members might have.
Great. Are there any questions? Not seeing it. Mr. Williams.
Since you correctly assumed that I would be interested in pipeline safety, is this an adequate amount of funds to, we have a huge pipeline network in the state, and obviously this interacts with both our climate change goals and our safety goals of not putting people in danger. Is that what percentage of our pipeline network can we tackle with that per year?
I'm not sure the precise answer to that. In my questioning when this was prepared, it was suggested that this was adequate for periodic inspections of the pipeline system throughout the state. So if you want a specific answer to that, I will get it to you, but I sort of put them through the paces on whether or not this was adequate to do the entire system. And I should mention as well, even though it's not the exact same one, that given the Aliso Canyon leak that happened in Southern California, we have done regulations that require inspections of that from of every place that there's underground gas storage. There's roughly 20. It's just that Aliso Canyon and one in San Joaquin County were the two largest that existed, and the Aliso Canyon one was the one that was obviously, it's the second smaller one in Los Angeles County, but is most near inhabited areas. And we believe at this point, we'll check in case we have to do something in the May revise, that we have adequate resources to do those inspections going forward.
I'm sorry, you're saying you do have adequate resources?
We believe we do at this point, but we're going to check it. If we think now that we've actually started to undertake it, we don't, we'll have something in the May revise.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.